The social media world is all a Twitter today. That's because the social media giant has announced billionaire Tesla CEO and SpaceX founder Elon Musk will buy the platform for about $44 billion and take it private. This comes as the EU has passed sweeping new regulations to root out disinformation and hate speech on social media. And joining us now with more are Ari Cohn, a local First Amendment and defamation attorney who serves as free speech counsel for the DC-based Tech Freedom think tank, and Richard Smith, CEO of the investor risk management app Risk Smith. Welcome both of you here to Chicago tonight. Ari Cohn, Elon Musk has certainly tweeted a lot about his intentions with Twitter, but what does this takeover portend for the social media giant?
It's hard to tell at this point. Elon Musk has said a whole bunch of things that he wants to do, and some of them, might be good ideas, and a lot of people do think they're good ideas. What remains to be seen is how easily it'll be accomplished. There's a lot that he wants to do, and some of it I think is more feasible than others. So it's going to be a while before we can really tell what the impact is going to be.
And Richard Smith, take us inside this $44 billion deal and why Musk pursued it.
I think it's a mission and passion project for him. I think he's been working on this for decades now, going back to his work with PayPal. He wants a more free, a more decentralized economy. I think he thinks this is the best thing he can do with his money, that he's gotten himself into this position and he can make this play for something that he really believes in. And I do think it's an authentic and sincere belief on his part that Twitter is a critical serves a critical function for society, and he's not happy with the way it's going, and he thinks it can be better.
And Ari Cohn, he says he's a free speech absolutist, and he'd be loath to really edit anything or suspend any accounts. But what could that look like when you see bad actors on social media that spread disinformation, they spread hate speech, and those things do lead to things like mob violence or some other kind of violence?
Well, so he says he wants to allow pretty much all speech that's legal, but even that's not necessarily true. He wants to get rid of the bots and he wants to get rid of the spam, which I fully support him on. But those things are still protected speech. It's really hard to, I guess it's a nice soundbite to say you want all the speech that's legal to be on there, but it's a much more different thing, practically speaking. And even the platforms that have come as kind of trying to pose as free speech alternatives all have rules that forbid certain speech that is constitutionally protected. Things like doxing, some platforms forbid even though it's constitutionally protected. So there's going to be line drawing one way or the other. And I think what also makes it complicated is determining what speech is or isn't legal is something only humans can do, and it's going to take a lot of them. Content moderation at scale is impossible, so impossible that we'll probably never actually master it. So it's going to be a really complicated thing to do. But on top of that, you also have to build a platform that people want to use. There's going to be some content that people aren't going to use the platform if they see that content, and there's going to be some content that advertisers don't want to put their advertisements next to. There's going to be line drawing, and there's going to be some kind of judgment. And that's the impossible part of content moderation. No matter what lines you draw and no matter where you draw them, those judgments are always going to be disagreed with by someone. People can't even agree on what free speech is.
Given the volume of posts every second, it seems like an impossible task here. Richard Smith, the other thing he says he wants to do is shed some light on these algorithms that Twitter uses to boost posts or that make posts go viral. How could that impact a company and the user experience?
Well, let me just make one point from Ari's comments. Musk does not have a completely free hand here. He did have to borrow a lot of money and do a lot of financing in order to make this deal possible. So he's under some market constraints still. I don't think he has quite the free hand that he wishes he did. But getting back to the algorithm question, I do think that's one of the most exciting developments here. And while I agree with Ari that there's lots of room for what is free speech and what's not, what I love about this deal is that I feel like it really opens up the conversation in a whole new way. And even if this deal hadn't closed, I still would have been considered Musk to have won for starting this conversation in the way that he has And the fact that he's willing to put his money where his mouth is and back it up and actually take responsibility for this, that's a big take, you know? So the algorithm part is huge. The idea of transparency around how algorithms are making decisions for us, I think, is huge. It's something I've been an advocate for a long time. It's why I'm developing technology, because my main concern is that we are being manipulated by these algorithms behind the scenes. They're behavior modification programs, you know, for corporate profit motives. Musk obviously isn't going to be free from that, and I'm not saying all of that should go away, but more transparency around that, more choice. I think this ultimately ties into Musk's and Jack Dorsey's, by the way, let's not forget about him, interest in cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So I think this is a sea change and a banner day in social media and big tech.
Ari Cohen, we mentioned at the top that this comes just after the EU passed these sweeping new regulations on these tech companies to police disinformation and hate speech. Remind us what these regulations would do.
So, you know, in other countries, there's a lot of speech that is protected by our First Amendment that isn't protected in those countries. And those countries are going to regulate and try and punish or fine platforms for not moderating that content, which in the US, the government absolutely could not forbid or punish social media platforms for hosting. And it really speaks to the problems of internet regulation, because one country might regulate content in some way, and that creates a compliance nightmare sometimes when there's all these different jurisdictions that a company has to deal with. And so then it becomes a question of, do I deal with each of those countries separately, or do I make my policies based around the most restrictive country? I actually agree with Richard also. I have to say that there's some things about his transparency ideas that are valid. He's really hit on a critical point that people don't trust how the platforms are being run and how they're being moderated. It's undeniable that that's true. And to that extent, when he says that he wants to maybe note in tweets when they've been prioritized or deprioritized and what the platform has done with them, I think that's a cool idea to try. And I really like that this really exhibits the way in which laws like Section 230 here in the US permit these platforms to come up with these new ideas and play around with them without a lot of the risk that's inherent in trying to do that.
And on that issue of transparency, Richard Smith, the other thing he says is he wants to just root out all the bots that are on there and make sure that they're verified humans using that platform. We know bots, they spread misinformation or they spread strange speech. Can that actually be accomplished?
Well, I think the key piece is verified humans, right? I'm not sure how he's going to do that without, KYI, KYC, know your customer, disclosing who you are, et cetera. How do you verify a human while still maintaining privacy, if that's what you want, which I don't think he intends to eliminate that option. So, these are great ideas, good aspirations. The devil's in the details, no doubt about it. But the fact that he is calling these problems out and saying he wants to do something about them is very encouraging.
All right. Well, go ahead, Ari. Just really quickly, make one more point.
I think the verified humans part is the part where there's a little bit more room for concern. I think that a lot of people want to stay anonymous on Twitter, whether it's because they don't want it tied so that their employer can find out, or they're a part of a marginalized group where it might be dangerous. But even if you don't have to post under your real name and it's just verified, Twitter has that information about your identity. And there are other countries where the government has no compunction about coming and saying, hey, well, give me the identities of these dissidents. And that worries me. There's a lot of problems with stripping anonymity.
So social media, as an entity is like 20 years old, and still there's so much to be figured out about how this should operate in the best interest of everybody involved. All right. Our thanks to Ari Cohen and Richard Smith. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.